Welcome to another episode of Purchase to Profits. I'm Seth Ferguson. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our daily interviews with successful real estate investors. Our guest today started out in the family real estate business in 1974, working in traditional forms of real estate, developing land, building homes, and running 7 apartment complexes. In 1994, he went out on his own and started in creative real estate investing with lease options and wholesaling, among other niches. Over the 22 years working in creative real estate, he has completed hundreds of deals, and for the last 7 years, he has coached thousands of students in lease options and wholesaling. Joe Bodek is the founder of Real Estate Mentoring USA. Joe, welcome to Purchase to Profits. It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Seth. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. So to kick things off, do you want to share with everybody what your goal is in real estate?
Well, at this point, to tell you the truth, Seth, my goal right now is really to teach a lot of students how to make a lot of money in real estate. That's really where I'm at right now.
Yeah, that's a great goal. Just because you're able to give all your experience and years of working in the business onto other people, and hopefully they won't make the same mistakes.
That's what we're going to try. That's what we try to do for sure.
Yeah. So when you, if we go back in time, back when you started in creative financing and starting to really build your business, what were you trying to set out to do? Did you have an end goal in mind, or did it just kind of happen by accident?
Well, no, the way I got started, as you had mentioned before, I had worked with my dad, who was a very big builder. As a matter of fact, if any of your listeners are living in a split level, they can say thank you to my dad.
Really?
He made them famous, actually. He claims he invented them, but I'm not really sure about that. But he made them famous. He built thousands of them, and they caught on. But at any rate, I was working in creative real estate in the family business, and was trained in traditional real estate. And how this whole thing got started was when my dad retired and went on down to Florida, and we sold everything off. It was time for me to go out on my own. And back in those days, we didn't have the internet or all this neat stuff that we got today, VAs and the internet and the software and all that stuff. So we did everything, paper and pencil and newspapers and all that stuff. And I had been getting what they called in those days junk mail. Today they call it spam. And at any rate, I had been getting these things from this one in particular guru who's still out there today, who shall remain nameless, but is one of my favorites. At any rate, he was telling how you could get sellers to give you the equity in their house and go into a deal with no money. Now, having come from my background, I thought the guy was a sleaze. I figured this guy's, he's definitely a sleaze. This will not work. It's impossible. However, I wanted to prove it. So what I did was I bought his course. And make a long story short, I studied his course and went out and put my ads in the newspapers. That's what we did in those days. And we talked on the phone in those days instead of emailing and all that. And I didn't know what I was doing, I got to tell you, because it was completely opposite of everything I had been doing for 25 years. And at any rate, I said, I'm going to follow exactly what this guy says to do. I'm going to do everything to the letter. And then when it doesn't work, I'm going to write the attorney general and say this guy's a thief and you should investigate him.
Yeah.
Well, 30 days after I got the course, I had a $10,000 check in my hand. Obviously, the man knew what he was talking about, and I was an idiot. So that's how I got started. I got started to prove that this stuff all these guys were saying was nonsense. Well, I tell your listeners, it's not nonsense. I've been on both sides of the wall here, and for sure, creative real estate works and works real well. Yeah. So that's how I got started.
That's interesting. So how did you handle the mindset change from going from a traditional real estate setting to now proving that the system worked? Like, how did you wrap your head around it? Because it must have been a pretty big shift in your thinking.
Well, it was a very big shift in terms of methodology, how you did deals. Yeah. But previously, what we were doing was providing, I was building houses. So, we were selling houses and I was renting apartments. So I was providing a place to live and that type of thing. When I went into creative real estate, what I found out was I was going to become a problem solver. I was going to save people that had a problem, which is what I teach my students to do, which is what we really do. Okay. Mm-hmm. So my mindset really went from the traditional, we're going to sell you something or rent you something, to you have a problem, I think I might be able to solve it. And that's how I entered the business, and that's pretty much how I look at it today.
Gotcha. And if somebody's watching who's not familiar with creative real estate, do you want to explain a little bit about what we're talking about right now?
Yeah, creative real estate is really, the norm is, I'll give you an example. We'll use lease options if that's okay,
Sure.
because that's the niche that I really like. But what you're doing in traditional real estate really is, for example, you're going to go to the bank, you're going to buy the house, you're going to go into debt, you're going to fix it, do what you got to do, and rent it out for that little bit of rent that you're going to get, and then wait for your equity build. That's what traditional real estate is. When you're doing a lease option, you're not going to go into debt. You're basically going to take over the payments for the seller. You're going to be able to sublease the property. So you're going to sublease it out to another, to a tenant buyer. And that tenant buyer is going to, for example, if you are paying the seller $1,000 for rent, that tenant buyer you're putting in there may pay you, for example, $1,300 or $1,400. And then you're going to make that spread. And then you're going to have upfront money and back-end money, and I'll give you a complete example of that in a minute. And what you're doing is you're creating all of this income out of thin air because you've got no debt. You're just putting the property under a lease, more or less, okay? So that's a real big difference. It's basically the ability to go into a deal with no money, solve a problem, and make money on that situation as you move that house, whether it's lease options or wholesaling or whatever niche you're going to use.
Yeah.
Whereas the old methodologies, or not old, they still do them today, obviously, is you go to a bank, borrow the money, and go in debt, and then do whatever it is you're going to do. Yeah. And that's really the big difference to me.
Yeah. And so when you were building up your business, did you have a certain number of deals you wanted to do a year, or how did you know what you needed to do to succeed and make that your primary source of income?
Well, I didn't really know because it was different. I didn't know how much you could make off a property and so forth. So the only thing that I could do was to move along each month and see what my marketing and so forth was providing. And if it wasn't providing enough, I had to up that game. And what I found was when I first started was if I was able to do 2 or 3 a month when I first started, I was making a pretty good living. Mm-hmm. And I knew from the big key was the marketing. Obviously, your listeners should know this business is 98% marketing. The rest of it all takes care of itself. I found that I was doing direct mail marketing in those days because that was really the only thing. You didn't have the internet or any of that, so you can only send out postcards and letters. So I found out through starting at a number I really didn't know, like 500 postcards, just to pick a number. Over the months as I went forward, I realized that as long as I sent out 1,000 postcards, and I was using the MLS at that time to expired listings and old actives, I knew I could make at least one deal from that, at least one, if not more. So that was my where I started. That was my baseline. I knew that for every 1,000 postcards I sent out, which is still true today, by the way, okay, I would be able to get a minimum of one deal. So that guided me as to what I had to do marketing-wise.
Yeah. And that gave, like you said, it gave you a baseline. So if you wanted to do 10 deals, you just had to multiply whatever you were doing by 10, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that pretty much, that was all that was available in those days because, as I say, we didn't have the internet. Today, you can do all kinds of sweet stuff, Mm-hmm. You don't have to do direct mail to survive today.
Yeah. And as you were doing this, did you ever try certain techniques that you thought for sure would work, but ended up falling flat?
To be honest with you, I actually didn't. I every deal that I did, because you want to become a transaction engineer as you go through this business, because all sorts of deals get thrown at you. Mm-hmm. I won't say that I found stuff that didn't work. I found stuff that I just didn't want to do for one reason or another. What I have found is that what you tend to do is, if you're smart, if you go and you have to understand there's lots to do in the real estate business. there's subject to, there's lease options, there's owner financing, there's traditional real estate. I mean, there's probate, you name it, they're out there.
Yeah.
So I tried pretty much each one. And what I found was lease options and wholesaling was where I wanted to hang my hat, particularly lease options. So I really didn't have anything that, went to hell when I tried to do it. I just didn't like it that much, over the other things that I liked.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And did you ever find, depending on, now we have lots of talk, right now we're speaking in early 2019, everybody's saying, lots of people are saying we're at the top of the cycle. Have you ever found with the lease options, if they're more successful in one part of the real estate cycle than another?
Well, I think that all creative real estate is obviously more successful when you have a bad real estate market, because obviously people can't move their houses. They're looking for other solutions. You have a guy, he bought a new house. He's got the old one. He's paying 2 mortgages. He can't afford it. He's going nuts.
Yeah.
Can't get rid of the property fast enough conventionally. There are lots of solutions that you can utilize to help that guy. So I always found that when you have a down market, when houses are not moving, then you're going to do better. However, I will say that in the 22 years I've been working in this end of the business, I have found that in any kind, if you have a down market, the solution is simple. You up your marketing. That's all you got to do. And in particular, if you're using, for example, wholesale lease options, they enable you to do your business virtually right from your desk. So you now have the whole country in which you can contact. So it's really a matter of, I don't worry about market, what's going on in the market. If I'm not getting where I'm supposed to be, the answer is always more marketing.
Gotcha. And is there one deal that stands out from all the ones you've done that stands out as a keystone deal?
Yeah, it was the first deal I ever did. Because that just spun my head. Again, you got to remember where I was coming from. Okay, Everybody was telling me I was nuts to even try this. Okay, first deal that I did was in a town called Boothwyn, not too far from where I am right now here in Pennsylvania. I'm right outside of Philly, and it was a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom colonial. In those days, what we did was newspaper ads. So, what We Buy Houses was in the newspapers. Now it's on the internet, but it was in the newspaper. And lo and behold, I got a call, and they had a problem. Needed to get out of the house. It was they wanted $210,000 for the house. The comps said that was okay. I got it under contract for that 210. Turned around, found a tenant buyer for $230,000. So I had $20,000 built into the deal. I took $10,000 up front in what's called an option consideration, which you can do with a lease option. So I took $10,000 up front, went into my pocket. That was paid to me by the tenant buyer. I had $10,000 remaining because I had 20 in the deal. So I had another $10,000 remaining on the back end, meaning a year down the road when I sold the house, that's when I got that other $10,000. You try and pull out as much as you can up front, but you can only get so much from a tenant buyer. So, I can only get the 10 up front. And I had a $300,000, I had a $300 rent spread. The seller needed $1,000 a month, and I was charging $1,300 to the tenant buyer. So when all was said and done, a year later, I had made $23,600 from this house, which, by the way, I never owned. Never owned it, okay? All I did was control it, which is what I like about sandwich lease options. You can control a property without owning it and not go into debt. Yeah. So that was the one that spun my head around. I did it in 31 days, having no clue what I was doing. You have to understand that, okay? I was just following everything that was in this manual that I had. And that was the one that convinced me that this thing works. And as I say, doing it in the old days was a lot different than doing it today.
Yeah. But I in saying that, though, I think the wording you use and finding the motivation of the seller, that hasn't changed, right?
No, that has not changed. It's pretty basic. The people that I deal with and my students deal with, there's 2 types of people out there, Seth. People that want to sell, people that need to sell. Now, you can deal with people that want to sell. It's not a problem, but they want what they want. So those deals can kind of drag on. You got to write contracts up 3 and 4 times. They keep changing their minds, and they make it harder for you to do that deal. People that need to sell are the type of person I told you, he's got 2 mortgages, can't pay them both, got transfer, got to get out of Dodge today, divorce, that type of thing. Those situations have been constant throughout my whole career. I've never seen those change. And they're out there every day. You're never going to run out of those type of situations.
Yeah. And one of the things I've often heard people say who haven't had success, maybe they've tried this and they haven't been successful, is, oh, well, this doesn't work in my market. My market is, overpriced, or the absorption rate's so low that every house sells. What would you say to somebody with that kind of thinking?
Well, number one, they're working the wrong market. That's number one. Okay. They're not going where these other people are. Okay. You've got to go, and there's a lot of ways to find them, okay? But one thing I will tell you, which I tell my students, the one thing that you have to understand if you're going to come into the real estate business, real estate works 100% of the time. It never fails. It always works. Why? Because there's 3 things that people need: food, shelter, and clothing. You got to have a roof over your head. You got to eat or you'll die, and you can't walk around naked or everybody's going to get mad at you, okay? So real estate always works. The reason it doesn't work is us. We're screwing it up. We're in the wrong market. We're overpricing houses. We're doing dumb things that if you correct those things, it will always work for you. There is always a market out there because people always have to have a roof over their head. And there's always people that have got a problem that needs to be solved. And in creative real estate, that's what we are. We're problem solvers. And they're always out there. So you've got to look past the people that want to sell to get to the people that need to sell. 90% of the people in this business, Seth, are not going to deal with you in a creative real estate mode. They're going to deal with realtors or sell it themselves. You're always looking for that 10%, no matter what the market is doing. Whether it's up or down, doesn't matter. There's always 10% out there that need us. All you have to do is up your marketing game, and you'll find them.
Yeah. And did you have any challenges as you were starting to scale your business, as you were doing more and more volume? Did you have to change how you were doing things?
Actually, I didn't. I'm old school. I'm a pencil and paper guy. I'm an old guy, okay? And I like the use of the computer, but believe it or not, when I first started, I used a journal. And I wrote everything down in there, and I made my own calls and did all kind of stuff. We didn't have VAs back then. Today, I've changed a little bit. I mean, I have VAs do research for me. I have VAs do certain things for me, which, the grunt work that I really don't want to do, and I recommend to all your listeners, they get VAs to do that. We also have software. Now, I think I told you I'm computer challenged. Software makes my head spin, but I do have 2 pieces of software that I like, that I can actually use, that I recommend to my students. So in that way, I did adjust to the new method. Like a lot of people use Podio. Now, I don't use Podio because it makes my head spin. What I do, believe it or not, to this day, I still use Excel sheets to keep track of what I'm doing. Right? People tell me I'm crazy. There's better, but I get confused when I go to a place like Podio. But I recommend to the new generations that they do use all the modern stuff out there. So yeah, I've made some adjustments over the years.
And does that change for somebody? Let's say they're doing, maybe 3 transactions a month, and then does that change between doing 3 transactions a month and 30 transactions a month? Like what shift has to happen there?
Well, yeah, you're going to need, if you want, it's a direct result of your marketing. So if you want to up it to something like that, you're going to have to get a VA to do all this grunt work for you. If you're working the internet, or you're working with wholesalers to get deals that they're throwing away, because you can do that with lease options, the deals that they can't do because of no equity in the property, or the seller won't take their low offer. You can have VAs search these guys out. So yeah, the answer to that question, if you're going to up your game like that, you're going to need assistance in order to do it, because you just won't have enough time to talk to everybody.
Yeah. And time is likely our most valuable asset. So anything that can save you time is definitely worth it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So how has getting involved in real estate on the creative side changed your life? Because I know you started off in the traditional sense. What has creative real estate done for you?
Well, what I liked about it for the most was I used to go to the bank and borrow millions of dollars and build houses, and the deals always went okay. But when you're in hock for 4 or 5 million bucks, it's not like you don't worry about it. Okay.
Yeah.
In creative real estate, I never have to worry about that. With the hundreds of deals that I have done, I'm, and you're not going to believe me on this, but I can't remember other than 1 or 2 or 3 times maybe giving out any money to a seller, for example, and that was only for maybe moving. Okay, it's very rare that I have to put out any kind of money to get, or any serious money if I have to put any out, in order to get a house under contract. Going to the bank, borrowing the money, buying the ground, building the houses, paying the mortgages on the apartments, all that stuff, that's kind of a worrisome deal, okay, especially when it's a lot of money. Creative real estate allowed me to shed that problem. I never have to worry about being in debt, which is what I like.
Yeah. Well, would you ever consider going back and doing some more traditional deals, or are you hooked right now?
No, I wouldn't, because, for example, in the old days when you were building properties, you didn't have a zillion agencies all over you, okay, making inspections every 5 minutes. You do today. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that's how you have to function today. The banks they still operate the same way. You screw up, we're going to come take everything away from you. Mm-hmm. So I have no incentive to go back to that life when I know that I'm creating money out of thin air simply by marketing a lot. Why would I want to go back to being in debt?
Yeah, no, for sure. So, Joe, if somebody's interested in your coaching program or learning more about what you do, where can they find you?
Well, they can find me at my site, realestatementoringusa.com. That's realestatementoringusa.com. I've got several different programs there: lease options, wholesales, and working with wholesalers, something called the Ultimate Automated Lead Machine. Because, as I say, marketing is the key. So they can go there and get a full explanation of what I do, how I do it, what my programs are worth. And the only other thing that I'm going to say also about that, if I have just a second.
Sure.
One of the things that I did in my programs was, I've had mentors before. I paid a lot of money for them. I wasn't real thrilled about it. Most of the time I knew more than they did, to be perfectly honest with you. What I did was, if any of your listeners do go check it out, what they'll find is they can get into my programs, and I set this up specifically this way, for less than a night out to dinner and a movie. That's all it costs to get involved, okay? And I did that because I had so many people wanting me to that's how I got into this coaching thing. Everybody was asking me, and I was doing it, and I say, hey, I'm pretty good at this. These people seem to be learning what I'm telling them. And that's how I started the business. The only problem was, and I am not casting aspersions on anybody, but if you go out there and try and find a coach or a mentor, you're going to pay. Everybody listening to you right now knows some of the ridiculous amounts of money. I don't begrudge that to these people. And, I've been in the business 41 years. I can charge that too without a problem. Most of these guys were not even born when I started back then. I hate to do that. I'm really hating myself. But one thing that I wanted to do is give everybody a shot. So the only way to really do that was to make it affordable for them to come in and do it. And that's what that's the most I'm proud of about my programs, is that anybody can take a shot, and I mentor them one-on-one. I mean, they deal directly with me. So I just give myself a little plug on that, because I think it's a little different than what you'll find out there.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I encourage everybody to check out the website. So, Joe, just want to say thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your real estate success with us today.
It was my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And to you, our viewers, I wish you well on your journey from purchase to profits. See you next time.